So Ivanka Trump has apparently been studying at a Jiu-Jitsu dojo, and she posted a video which this Jiu-Jitsu place had first posted of her rolling some dude like a burrito on the dojo floor. Really just amazing. The thumbnail that we're probably going to use for this video, for this podcast episode also, is a real thumbnail from that video. It's not AI. So again, Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter, now a jujitsu master, and a totally different vibe from this administration and this first family versus the first Trump term. I think turning Trump into a convicted felon and just the level of harassment that they directed to Trump and his family during the Biden years of politicized lawfare and harassment, I think has made a much tougher Trump family. Again, you got to watch this video. I guess you can go on my X page because I retweeted it or I reposted it. Go over there, and it's one of the top things on the page at the moment. A very easy way to watch it. Yeah, incredible. Her just rolling this dude like a little burrito, putting him in a leg lock, twisting his arms back like she's ripping apart the legs of a crab at a seafood restaurant. Just incredible. Just an incredible, messaging there of strength, that the first family is strong and ready for anything. And at the same time, you have the White House coming out with all this PR for the contract going to Boeing. Boeing, of course, doesn't make space-worthy stuff, but at least they can make killer aircraft. And getting the contract from Uncle Sam to build this F-47 next generation fighter jet. Sixth generation, they're calling it. The sixth generation fighter jet, the F-47. Designed for collecting Chinese skulls if the need ever arises. If diplomacy and market economics were to break down to the point where we went to war with China, the F-47 would be the aircraft, probably mass deployed. So yeah, exciting times, total night and day difference from the Biden era, from sleepy Joe Biden. It seems like he was putting the country to sleep. Not only was he a forgetful old buffoon, but it seems like by extension, his wayward leadership was putting the whole country to sleep. And these protesters in D.C., these gray-haired things that used to work at USAID and push the send button on these multi-million-dollar payments to torturing animals and bizarre transgendering studies overseas and gain-of-function research on some of the world's worst viruses, making viruses stronger. Okay. So these things have the shameless nerve to protest in D.C., all these signs against Elon Musk and against Trump. What exactly are you protesting for? You protesting to go back in time? Do you want a time machine to be built? To go back to where we didn't all know you were stealing from the Treasury by way of these outrageous USAID grants and contracts? Anybody who pulled more than $1 million out of the National Treasury to fund transgendering experiments on animals, torturing animals, or who forwarded that money to have common viruses made more pathological, made more pathogenic, more harmful to humans. If you did that, you need the maximum prison sentence. So in a way, thank you for showing your faces one last time. You bizarre clowns at USAID. Again, these old ladies protesting in D.C., what are you protesting for? Thank you for showing your faces so that Kash Patel's FBI knows who to prosecute. Not for protesting, but for stealing our nation's money and for abusing our trust at the highest levels imaginable. Taxpayers did not think most of their money was going to this garbage. They didn't think any of their money was going to it. So yeah, unless they're protesting for a time machine, I think it's going to be pretty fruitless. I don't think there's any turning back the clock. And you got, at minimum, 4 years of this administration. Because Trump won. He won both the electoral and the popular vote. And he and Vance, it seems there's no way for the left to dislodge these two. No way for them to be dislodged because they have the people's support. And they're so early on in their term that any attempt to foment, dissatisfaction is seen for what it is. It's just like organized agitprop for the billionaires who are bleeding us dry through these outrageous globalist USAID contracts and grants. Again, prison for every single one of these people. They're not cutting deep enough, and they shouldn't let these people protest every other weekend in DC. It should be prison. What these things that USAID did is 1,000,000,000,000 times worse than the most violent J6 protester. So where is the federal government to prosecute every single one of these wayward former employees of the government who stole our fucking money? Where are their long prison sentences? Where are the prosecutions? I think they're coming, but I think we also need to stay alert here, right? No, moving on to the next thing. Nope, if you worked at USAID, you're not going to protest every weekend for the next 4 years because we want you in a fucking prison cell. What you did is so much worse than, again, what these J6 protesters did, which the left makes seem like the worst thing since Hiroshima. Well, you know what? That was a bunch of trumped up media bullshit. And here you got people who are stealing our nation's wealth at scale. And clearly they can't defend it, which is why they're going after Tesla instead and telling people to burn Teslas to the ground. Guys like Jimmy Kimmel should be held accountable. He's getting a script from somebody. He's getting a narrative. Because that's really actually not that funny. It's actually not that funny to suggest burning down the property of the 10th or 11th largest American corporation that employs a lot of decent people and that makes an earth-friendly car. Outrageous. The most successful EV maker. And you got late night show hosts telling their audiences, wink, wink, don't burn a Tesla. Hey, he should be held culpable. And his masters at ABC and Disney, which owns ESPN also, his masters should be held accountable. Same with that Stephen A. Smith, that sports reporter at ESPN, which again is owned by Disney. So he's basically an entertainment reporter. If you're a sports reporter, sorry, you're not the real thing. You report on men's games. You're not the real thing. You're not a real journalist. So when he tries to sway the national conversation, he's literally an entertainment reporter owned by Disney. And I think the American people are getting sick of this. I think we're getting sick of this rigged show. Elections have consequences. It's time to honor the election. Time to honor the fact that, yes, the American people place their confidence and faith in this man, and that is our system. The power rests in the executive branch. It doesn't rest in random fatties at the CIA. It doesn't rest in these former USAID things. They look like just monsters, just these long gray-haired fucking monsters, these harpies. Give us our money back. Elon, stop stealing. Do you realize how fucking dumb you sound? Telling the world's richest man to stop stealing. What a dumb inversion, right? Because you were the ones who were stealing. You were stealing from all of us. And if not for this election outcome, we would have never known. But it seems like a low probability thing that Trump got back in there. And it seems even lower probability to me that Bitcoin is such a big part of his, vision. Really incredible that these things have come in as they have. Eric Trump, the president's son, saying he's all in for Bitcoin. I mean, these are big words coming from powerful people. And again, night and day difference from the Biden era. While they were stealing from our shared treasury, our nation's wealth, they were telling us that we could go to prison for receiving a 50-cent Bitcoin tip. These are bad people, and they should be prosecuted. If and when the good times come, we should actually not forget the past. Actually, no free pass for Mr. Podesta and Mr. Soros and his little son, Alex Soros. These people think that this is their country and that the rest of us are their servants. And that's not our system. So, a very low probability event that Trump actually won. And now you're seeing all the results of that and his loyalty to the Bitcoin community. I could not be more pleased. Absolutely incredible. And so I think you see this demonetization ahead of things like the Fed and things even like the IMF as people turn to hard money, as people realize that the best money is money with no counterparty, which would be Bitcoin and gold. But even gold has its issues, right? Because you got to store it somewhere, and that drives up the cost of holding it. And certainly transferring it is problematic. You know, the ocean is littered with gold transport ships through the ages that didn't make it across the ocean and sank. So gold is not a perfect mechanism for sending value around the world, but it's better than the Federal Reserve dollar. It's better than a made up thing that they use to enslave us and use to influence things elsewhere in the world, but influence things in a really weird, creepy way. Like not giving the money to poor, starving people, but giving the money to laboratories in Europe to create transgender mice and to make the common cold more deadly and stuff. Like, why is this where our money's going? These people belong in prison. So, yeah, I think it's a totally different vibe from this Trump administration versus the early Trump versus 2017 Trump when he didn't know how vicious things were. I really don't think he realized the extent of the entrenched viciousness in DC. That this is an organized crime ring that's stealing from us, and it seems like his attorney general, Pam Bondi, could definitely use RICO. Could definitely use the existing RICO statutes to go after these people. These are not politicians acting in our best interests. These are, again, members of an organized crime ring. And the federal judges who keep trying to turn back on the USAID funding, whose wives literally draw $1 million salaries from nonprofits that are funded by USAID, these people need to, first of all, stop what they're doing, and then they need to trot into prison too. Because abusing your perch as a federal judge, the highest of the high in our land, to abuse that sacred perch to protect your wife's nonprofit earnings from this USAID hustle that makes Tammany Hall look fucking sacred by comparison is completely outrageous. These people need to lose their judgeships immediately and then be prosecuted. Because that's not our system. Stealing from us forever. Stealing from the taxpayer, stealing from your own citizens, that's not our system. And now that we know, again, there's no time machine that brings us back to, oh, we don't know. We do know. So these people, again, to misuse your perch as a federal judge, you know, just to protect your wife or your family members' illicit income, you know, like what the fuck? It's beyond third world. So I think the other thing I wanted to mention is, let's pause this for a second here. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a situation outside. They have police helicopters and a SWAT team. It's not focused on me, obviously, thankfully. The swatting issue is out of control. So many right-wing content creators have been swatted in recent days. This is what losers do. This is what people who don't honor the election do. And some of these, I'm going to wait for some of this noise to die down. But it seems like we're in a transitional state right now in America. Like order is returning after 4 years of kind of a ghost ship. And some people aren't taking that return to order very well. And again, Jimmy Kimmel, he needs to be held accountable for what he's doing. If he were to disagree with Bill Gates' politics, and if he were to suggest that his viewers pirate Microsoft products, if he were to suggest they pirate software, he would be off the air so fast because his masters at ABC would be unwilling to deal with the lawsuits from Microsoft that would come, that would inevitably come. And yet here he's allowed to encourage violence against, people who own the most American-made cars there are. Most American cars on the road are Teslas, fact. So these sad people who've been doing the Tesla vandalism, in the arrest mugshots, they all look kind of the same. The same unkempt beards and the sad, troubled eyes. These are people who have no actual friends. And Jimmy Kimmel or whoever at night, that's their friend group. That's their parasocial circle, or the people they watch at night who tell them jokes. And some of these sad people with no real support structure, they fancy themselves the enforcers for these leftists who lost the election. And now it's come out that Trump might do a deal with the president of El Salvador to have these vandals sent down there to their world historical anti-gang prisons. Can you imagine? I mean, talk about misreading the room. Imagine misreading the room to that extent. I mean, if you don't like the Trump administration, you can create a blog or even a YouTube channel or a TikTok or a podcast or something and speak your mind. But destroying your fellow Americans' property that they worked hard for. Many people aspire to own a Tesla. It's aspirational. To burn that shows what you are, just an agent of chaos working for leftists who are throwing a temper tantrum because their secret money faucet has been turned off. Turns out that's the deep state. Bunch of gray-haired bureaucrats in DC. That's your deep state, folks. It's kind of sad when you think about it. All the theories that the trillions of dollars disappearing from the government were going to some kind of black budget, maybe. Maybe it was going to a secret space program. Maybe they kept the space shuttle going and didn't tell us all these years. And there's some military base out there in deep space. Nope. All that David Wilcox stuff is nonsense. Sadly. Wouldn't that be nice if they turned around and said, hey, we know the accounting's all fucked. Here's why. You've got a breakaway civilization. We've got the military on multiple planets. And our future's going to be brighter than you can imagine. Nope. It was just going to common theft. Bunch of leftoids gifting each other the public wealth. And that's part of why the blockchain's so important. It's part of why Trump coming around to Bitcoin and creating this Bitcoin reserve, it's such a crazy low probability outcome that we're actually experiencing now. Just again, imagine being some foot soldier for the left, burning Teslas right now. And then you end up being sent to El Salvador and housed indefinitely with some of the worst criminals that exist in this hemisphere. Some of the most violent people that exist within thousands of miles of us are housed in those anti-gang prisons in El Salvador. And that's for these people who have no friends who watch Jimmy Kimmel at night. That's where some of them are going to end up. Talk about misreading the room. It's just crazy. They've gone absolutely nuts. And I almost can't believe it. I almost can't believe the left is burning down the company, the only company that's been successful from a profit and sustainability view, the only company that's actually really growing the electric vehicle movement, which is an important movement. You know, you get into a Tesla, it really does feel like it's 10 years ahead of every other car. The whole concept of an internal combustion engine, it's an outdated idea. And you see how it uses up so much of the room, right? So much of the usable space in your car is the engine block, right? The engine block and the transmission takes up most of the space. Whereas in a Tesla, you're basically riding on top of a battery pack. It's like a remote control car almost, RC car from when you were a kid. You're riding on top of a battery pack, so there's a lot more free space. That's why you have the frunk as well as the trunk. And even their standard 3 or whatever has way more room than any comparable car in its class. And to burn those, it's not just trashy, it's not just violent. It shows a total misread, total inability to gauge the temperature right now in the country. And as I said over on X, whenever you try to stamp something out, especially if you do it too quickly, it seems like it always makes that thing stronger. So turning Tesla into a victim only means there's going to be a whole new market segment, I think, of customers who previously would have never considered a Tesla, who now want to buy one just to support Elon Musk's, historic efforts to cut down the corruption in DC. So they want to support him and they want to see him keep going. And your reward for supporting him is you get to drive a car that, again, feels like it's 10 years ahead of everything else on the road. And for all the weird videos claiming that full self-driving is not any good, it's incredible. Take it for a drive yourself. You can do a free demo drive. It's actually incredible. It's actually one of the best things that America is producing and exporting at the moment are those Tesla cars with the full self-driving, which costs a little extra. But then you have a car that drives itself. It's like having a chauffeur. It's incredible. It's truly incredible. I did a road trip about halfway across the country not long ago, and I had the full self-driving on. It felt like I was a passenger in a train, just the high-speed train. All the anxiety of the road trip removed. I mean, you still have to pay attention, but it's doing the work. It's doing the decision making. And no, he's an incredible phenomenon. And what's happening now in America is incredible. And I don't think it's as big a deal as the founding of the country, right? I don't think this is as big a moment as the creation of the United States. But I think it's up there with, say, Teddy Roosevelt. This is a true reform era. We haven't seen something like this in perhaps a century. And I'm just going to keep reporting as I see it. I'm not some, Trump cheerleader like Jack Posobiec. But at the same time, these are truly extraordinary moves. And what he said, those remarks he delivered at the Digital Asset Summit about Bitcoin and its role in the future of America, what he said is, that's all I need to hear. He's got me for the next 4 years. He really does. He's done more for Bitcoin and for the sound money movement than any president has before. Previous presidents tried to slow this thing down, whereas he's mainlining it. And again, the F-47, them pouring money into this next generation fighter jet that was going nowhere. It was going nowhere under Biden. It shows that if things do break down with China, at least we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to, we don't have to supplicate ourselves before China. And their economy obviously works on exports. They build stuff cheaper than we can and sell it to us. And if we turn off that economic faucet to China too quickly, their whole thing is their people don't have freedom. They have a surveillance state. There's a lot of oppression, a lot of top-down control. But the implicit guarantee is in exchange for all this control, you're going to have economic growth. And that economic growth grinds to a halt if Trump's tariffs and if his America First policy really works. And you already see Apple and NVIDIA pledging massive amounts of support for bringing production home, starting up stateside production of these chips and stuff. And once that really kicks into gear, it reduces the usefulness of China. And they may not like that. Their leadership may decide that they have to do something to restore the previous sleepy state of the United States. And it's great to see not only the F-47 development, but for Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, it's great to see the Secretary of Defense there in the Pentagon referring to our service members as warfighters. What do warfighters do? Well, they fight wars. I love this change in rhetoric, right? Because the words you use matter. Service member, okay. Was this a glorified jobs program? Is that what our military is? Just dress up and you become a service member? No, these are war fighters. These are people who, if everything else breaks down, and if we can't come to a nice, fair deal with these countries that are basically adversaries, we can back it up. How refreshing. Again, this is a totally different country from just back in December, from Biden December. This is a completely different country. And the people torching Teslas who risk being sent to El Salvador's prison system, they're not getting it. They couldn't get it less, right? You just stay on the sidelines for a little while if you need to. But to be an enforcer for these leftoids, it's not a good place to be. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. I greatly appreciate it. Also appreciate everybody signing up over on Substack. The link should be in the description of today's episode. If you haven't yet, add your email address. There's a free version that gives you a lot of updates. And there's also a paid version that some of you guys are getting into, which I greatly appreciate. The paid version gives you priority access to me, and it lets you post comments over there on Substack. And it's a great growing community. If you want to talk to other people who are actually real people and not leftoid zombies, that's your place.